Senator, I hate having you on because every time you're here, we know it's for one reason. It's a new school year, and here we are again. Students and teachers sheltering from another deadly shooting from a teenager, a 14-year-old, a freshman in high school. When you heard this report today, what went through your mind? This was you 3 years ago, 2 years ago.
Well, Stephanie, it was just all of this is just so sad and disgusting, quite frankly, that we can't figure this out in this nation. My heart goes out to those families. It's so important that everybody across this country understand that Mason Schermerhorn and Christian Angulo and those two teachers, they're not coming home. There's not another school day for those children. The finality of death, people need to understand it, because we have to do something about this in this country, and to do something means an assault weapons ban. This weapon fires 3 times the speed of a .9mm, and it causes incredible damage. I sued the state of Texas to see the videos that happened in Uvalde, Texas, and it leaves very little semblance of the human body left when you get shot by one of these weapons. We have to do something now. It's my hope that people in this country understand this.
Hugo, this awful, awful day, this tragedy, again, puts the issue of gun violence front and center in the final stretch of campaigning. Oftentimes, one of these tragedies happens. We talk about it for a few days. The news cycle moves on. But here we are, less than 70 days from the race, from the election. Do you think this somehow changes the dynamics of the race? Will voters demand action from one or both of these candidates?
I don't know the extent to which it's going to change the dynamics of the race, but certainly at the moment, and kind of what transpired on the campaign trail today, I thought was very telling, because it was really a split screen in many ways. I was traveling with the vice president today to New Hampshire when she delivered those remarks, and she kind of spoke very common sense. I thought, the way she said, it doesn't have to be this way, and we can add new restrictions on firearms. And meanwhile, the Trump campaign's response to this was, well, we don't even want to be talking about the politics, which to me is actually kind of telling, having covered this campaign now for a while. That's usually a sign that they don't want to engage on the substance of the policy. And I think the actual reason for that is because their policy is to oppose any new restrictions on gun rights. It's to oppose any rollbacks on curbing the proliferation of assault-style weapons, which was the kind of weapon that was used today. They didn't want to draw attention to that because it made their position look weak. And I think when you look at that in a whole, like for voters, it's very apparent, I think which side is for curbing guns and these sorts of instances and allowing people to perpetrate real murders with these sorts of weapons.
But policy is what millions of parents around the country are demanding tonight. Parents are too afraid to send their kids to school tomorrow out of fear another student could walk in with an AR-15 style weapon. Evan, what do you think?
Well, Hugo is, of course, right that this is one of the issues where the starkest divide between the parties is really very, very clear here. The Republican Party has said for a long time that basically the answer to gun violence is either more guns or just there really isn't much that you can do about it. While Democrats have tried to talk about the idea of assault weapons bans and other kinds of gun safety legislation and gun safety measures, it just is so difficult in these moments to have it ever sort of break through.
It doesn't have to be difficult, right? Everything is difficult until you say, no, I'm going to do something. I'm going to put myself out there and create change.
Well, which is what the vice president said today is actually quite interesting along those lines. We have some reporting coming out tomorrow in Notice, notice.org, talking about this issue. Gun violence, gun safety people are saying that Democrats really should jump on this issue more and push harder on it. Because that poll that you mentioned, talking about young people and how worried they are about this, there are gun safety people who feel like this issue has been kind of put on the back burner by Democrats. It's not their top issue. They obviously care about it. They talk about it a lot, but it's not the number one thing. And these experts told us at Notice that they think that there are moments where the Democrats should actually be a little bit bolder on this issue because of poll numbers like that and because of just how focused so many people in this country are on trying to do something about this. And as Hugo mentioned, on the campaign trail right now, it's really only one candidate that's actually offering any sort of solutions at the moment.
Well, Senator, after the mass shooting in Uvalde, President Biden did sign the first major gun safety legislation that we had in our country in 30 years. That's something. What do you think reasonably can be proposed and can get done? You're in Texas, where things haven't gotten done on a state level, even though it happened in your own backyard.
Yeah, nothing's happened in the state of Texas, Stephanie, but I do want to point out, if you look at the Parkland shooting in Florida, after that horrible act that happened in Florida, Rick Scott, then the governor, passed over 21 pieces of legislation, including red flag laws, including certain age limit requirements on these types of weapons. 75% of Republican voters in Texas want to see age limits on access to these types of weapons. I, of course, want to see an assault weapons ban. I think that politicians throughout this country, when these things happen in their districts, they need to do what I did. I didn't want to go see dead kids, videos of dead kids. But when you see a little girl with her face just gone, just obliterated in such a horrific way, it changes everything that you believe in life, and it changes your focus entirely. If policymakers truly want to do the right thing here, they need to understand that this is not just another mass shooting. This is the end of two little boys' lives, the end of two teachers' lives, and all of this is avoidable. Every sheriff in Parkland, in Florida rather, appreciates the fact that they have red flag laws. If we had red flag laws in Georgia, and I don't know if we do, this might have been avoided about a year ago.
Yeah, and it was Parkland students who fought for it. David Hogg was a 17-year-old high school student in Parkland, Florida, and today he is one of the strongest, most outspoken gun safety advocates in this country. So change can happen. We do have to remind ourselves, though, Donald Trump, the last time we saw his statement on his social media platform, but the last time we had a shooting, the aftermath of a shooting in Iowa, I want to share a bit of what Donald Trump said. Watch this.
It's a very terrible thing that happened, and it's just horrible to see that happening. That's just horrible. So surprising to see it here, but we'll have to get over it. We have to move forward. We have to move forward.
Hugo, no, we don't. We don't have to get over it and move forward. We have to do something about it. So who is that message for? Is that for hardcore NRA-flavored Republicans who are saying, don't talk about it, look the other direction? Because the majority of the country is not looking to get over it and move on. Certainly no one from those communities, certainly none of those families.
I think that's right. The audience really is basically red meat MAGA people and his wider base, because for them they see gun rights as something that is inalienable and shouldn't be touched. And I think the Trump campaign runs into this issue over and over again, which is they have policies which are unpopular with large parts of the country, but are very popular with certain sections of their base. And if you think about what Trump's trying to do in this election, he's actually trying to turn out a voting bloc that didn't turn out for him in 2020, but did in 2016. And that's kind of young white men, and especially what they call target persuadables. Young white men who are difficult to reach, who kind of probably skew conservative and don't, consume mainstream news. And to that demographic, the Trump campaign has long believed the most conservative of policies and their positions on the Second Amendment are what is going to get them to go to the polls this year. And that has been their singular focus for months now. And I think it also kind of explains why Trump talks the way he does when trying to bridge this gap between fundamentally unpopular policies, but also trying to appeal to a very, very narrow subsection of his base, which he thinks will swing the election in his favor.
Are they right? I mean, let's just talk about young male white voters. They might like to play violent video games. They might be anti, quote unquote, cultural wokeness. But I don't know. There's an awful lot of young white males who certainly don't want to go to school and risk gun violence.
Well,
he's doing
David
it for them.
Hogg, right? I mean,
yeah.
that's a young white male voter. This is the big challenge that the Republicans have with this issue, is that it kind of feels like we're kind of in a zombie land when it comes to this, because the NRA doesn't have the power it used to have. The conversation has changed a lot in politics about this issue.
I mean,
but the Republican Party sounds even more and more sort of extreme on this.
What a superpower Wayne LaPierre once was. Yeah. He's a shriveled up old man who's unemployed at this point, who has zero power, probably not even in his household.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do know that this is a fascinating piece of politics to cover. I've covered so many of these shootings. It's been such a horrible part of being a journalist in this era, is going to cover these and being part of these conversations. And every time it goes the exact same way, which is everybody says, well, surely there's something that we can do. And then someone says, actually, no, we really can't do anything at all. And the Republican Party kind of tends to go quiet on it. I mean, there have been moments, as the senator mentioned, where some states have stepped up and made changes and made political changes. And those Republicans haven't been punished by their voters in those states. They didn't lose a bunch of national support or anything like that. But for some reason, when it comes to this issue on the national stage, the GOP specifically just seems very, very nervous about getting anywhere away from the idea of guns for anybody who wants them whenever they can get them. That's the best way to solve this problem. And I'm just not convinced that that's a very helpful message for them going forward, but they seem to be sticking with it.